Welcome back. Today we continue our English journey with the story of a footballer whose rise was as improbable as it was inspiring, the tale of Luka Modrić. Born in the shadow of war and raised in hardship, he became the heartbeat of a nation and one of the most respected midfielders in the history of football. Picture this: a child no taller than a goalpost, living in a war-torn village, learning to kick a ball between shell-damaged walls while tanks rolled by in the distance. You probably couldn't handle it if you were in this situation. And honestly, neither could most adults. But Luka did. And before we begin today's exciting journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave me a comment. Let's not keep you waiting. Time to dive into today's story. Luka Modrić was born on September 9, 1985, in Zadar, a coastal town in what was then Yugoslavia. The Balkan region was simmering with political tensions, and soon after Luka was born, the Croatian War of Independence erupted. For a child, there's no preparing for such violence. His grandfather, who shared his name, was killed by Serb rebels, and the Modrić family was forced to flee their home in the mountains of Modrić. They found shelter in a modest hotel in Zadar, which became both a temporary home and Luka's first playground. While the war outside raged on, little Luka spent hours juggling a worn-out ball in the hotel parking lot, his tiny legs mastering control, balance, and focus. The cracked asphalt didn't care about his dreams, but Luka kicked anyway. Bombs often fell nearby, and the sounds of sirens weren't unusual. The children of Zadar learned to run to shelters as quickly as they learned to tie their shoes. And yet, amid this chaos, Luka remained drawn to the game. He would practice for hours, dribbling between rocks, making up imaginary matches in his head. Some kids had dolls or cars. Luka had a deflated football and a dream. Even as a child, he was quiet, thoughtful. He wasn't the loudest voice in the room, but when he played, people noticed. There was a grace to his movements, like he was dancing around danger, something he had been doing all his life. One of his earliest escapes from daily hardship was watching Croatia's newly formed national team on TV. Davor Šuker, Robert Prosinecki, these names were heroes to Luka. But unlike many kids who just admired from afar, Luka believed. He never said it aloud, but deep inside he wanted to be one of them. A local coach named Domagoj Bajic noticed him during a community football camp. At first, it was easy to overlook Luka. He was small, skinny, and looked younger than his age. But once he touched the ball, everything changed. He was like a mouse, the coach would later say, but with the feet of a magician. At the age of 10, Luka joined NK Zadar's youth team. Getting to training wasn't easy. His family had little money, and sometimes he would walk long distances or take old buses just to make it on time. His cleats were hand-me-downs. His kit was often too big. But none of that mattered. All he wanted was to play. It's easy to look at a successful athlete and forget the little moments, like Luka practicing alone after dark, using streetlights as goalposts, or how he once cried after being told he was too weak to make it big. It hurts when people doubt you because of your size, especially when your heart is 3 times bigger. One day, after a tough loss in a local youth match, Luka sat quietly on the edge of the pitch. A teammate offered him a soda, but he declined. "Why not?" the boy asked. Luka replied, "Because I don't want to feel comfortable. I want to remember how losing feels." Some say this mindset, the hunger, the quiet fire, was what separated Luka from the rest. Others argue it was his technique. But maybe it was both. Or maybe it was something more, a kind of invisible resilience forged in the flames of his childhood. By age 14, he caught the attention of Dinamo Zagreb, Croatia's most prestigious football club. But even there, some questioned if he was strong enough. One scout famously said, "He looks like he might break if the wind blows too hard." Still, Dinamo gave him a chance. He moved to Zagreb alone, scared but determined. In his small apartment, he kept a photo of his grandfather. "He didn't get to see me play," Luka once whispered. "But I play for him." At night, when he missed his family or felt the weight of expectations, he would write in a notebook. Just short phrases: stay humble, outwork everyone, prove them wrong. He never showed it to anyone. It wasn't for the world. It was for the boy in the hotel parking lot, the boy who never gave up. That boy was now turning into a man, and the world was beginning to notice. When Luka arrived at Dinamo Zagreb's youth academy, he wasn't met with celebration. Instead, he was met with raised eyebrows. The coaches admired his touch and vision, but there were doubts, again, about his size, his strength, and whether his slender frame could survive the intensity of elite football. For Luka, this was nothing new. He had heard whispers all his life. But instead of arguing, he let his feet do the talking. The training sessions were tough. Competition was fierce. Some of the other boys came from wealthier families and had already trained in well-equipped environments. Luka was still wearing the same old boots from Zadar, their soles slowly thinning with every step. One day during a rainy practice, a teammate joked that Luka's cleats looked like they had survived the war, which in a way they had. Luka just smiled and kept running. Quiet, focused, determined. But not everything at Dinamo came easily. After a few years in the academy, the club made a tough decision. Luka wasn't ready for the first team. Instead of giving up on him, they loaned him to a second-division Bosnian club called Zrinjski Mostar. For many players, this would feel like a step back. For Luka, it was another test. Mostar was a rough, unforgiving place to play football. The league was physical, the pitches were poor, and the crowds could be hostile. At just 18 years old, Luka was the youngest player in the league. He had to adapt quickly. Tackles came harder, faster, and sometimes even late. But Luka didn't flinch. He kept his head down and adapted. He learned how to shield the ball with his body, how to anticipate danger, how to read the game like a chess master. He also learned how to take a hit, and then calmly play a perfect pass seconds later. That season with Zrinjski turned into a breakthrough. Luka didn't just survive, he thrived. He scored goals, created chances, and won the league's Player of the Year award, a stunning achievement for a teenager. But even more impressive than the stats was how he had matured. He had transformed from a skinny prospect into a true competitor. After that, Dinamo Zagreb brought him back and loaned him once more, this time to Interza Prižik, a Croatian club in the top division. Again, Luka shined. He dictated play, controlled tempo, and looked far older than his age. His passes sliced through defenses like a violin bow cutting across strings, precise, beautiful, and full of rhythm. When he finally returned to Dinamo for good, there were no more doubts. He became the heartbeat of the team, winning 3 league titles in a row and lifting 2 Croatian cups. But what made Luka special wasn't just his trophies. It was the way he played. Every touch was thoughtful. Every movement had meaning. He played with an elegance that seemed to slow time down. If football were a poem, Luka Modrić was a quiet stanza that made you pause and feel. Still, Luka knew that if he wanted to reach the highest level, he had to leave Croatia. Europe was calling. In 2008, Tottenham Hotspur signed Luka for a then-club record of £16.5 million. It was a huge move, and with it came even bigger pressure. The English Premier League was faster, more physical, and much more brutal than anything he had experienced before. His early days in London were challenging. Critics in the media questioned the signing. Pundits labeled him too lightweight, and after a few games without impact, headlines began to suggest he was a luxury player, not built for English football. Luka once again faced the same story. But this time something changed. Instead of retreating into himself, he began to speak up in training. He pushed harder, fought for every ball, and worked on his defensive skills. Under manager Harry Redknapp, Luka slowly moved from attacking midfield into a deeper role, one where he could see more of the pitch and dictate from the shadows. It was here that he began to shine. Teammates started to see his value. He wasn't flashy, but he was consistent, reliable, a metronome. His passes opened space, his movement drew defenders, and his calmness spread to everyone around him. One teammate said, "Playing next to Luka felt like having a GPS for the game." There was a funny moment in training when one of the new signings challenged Luka to a foot race, expecting to win easily. Luka quietly dusted him in a few strides and turned back with a grin. "I may be small," he said, "but I move like the wind." The entire team laughed, including the coach. That season, Tottenham qualified for the Champions League, and Luka was at the center of it all. His reputation grew not just in England but across Europe. Clubs started watching. Fans began chanting his name. Even the doubters fell silent. But amidst the growing fame, Luka never changed. He still lived quietly. He still arrived early to training and stayed late. He still sent postcards to his parents in Zadar and called his childhood coach to thank him after big wins. Some say it was his humility that kept him grounded. Others point to his upbringing, the war, the hotel, the long walks to training. Whatever the reason, Luka remained the same boy who used streetlights as goalposts and wrote down dreams in a notebook. Now, with the world watching, his next chapter was about to begin. In 2012, Luka Modrić made the biggest leap of his career, a move to Real Madrid. It was one of the most high-profile transfers of that summer, but also one of the most questioned. Real Madrid fans, famously passionate and demanding, weren't entirely convinced. The Spanish press called him unproven at the highest level. Some even went as far as to label him one of the most disappointing signings of the year after his first few matches. And yet, as always, Luka remained calm. Madrid was different. The training sessions were faster. The spotlight was blinding. The club, filled with Galacticos like Cristiano Ronaldo, Sergio Ramos, and Karim Benzema, operated under enormous pressure. Luka arrived not as a superstar but as a player with quiet elegance. And at first, that silence worked against him. There were moments he questioned himself. Sitting alone in his apartment, unfamiliar with the language and culture, he sometimes wondered if he belonged. A few teammates noticed how he stayed late after practice, often doing extra touches or studying footage on his iPad. They teased him for being too serious, but Luka just smiled. "I'm learning," he'd say, "and I want to earn my place." That mindset slowly began to pay off. Jose Mourinho, the coach at the time, started giving Luka more time on the pitch. He may not have scored goals like Ronaldo or tackled like Ramos, but his influence became undeniable. His ability to control the tempo, link defense to attack, and find impossible passing angles made him indispensable. His turning point came during a Champions League match against Manchester United. With Madrid trailing, Luka came off the bench and scored a stunning equalizer, a curling shot from outside the box that silenced Old Trafford and shifted the tie in Madrid's favor. From that moment, the fans began to see him differently. The whispers turned to applause. Over the next few seasons, Luka became the engine of Real Madrid's midfield. Alongside Toni Kroos and Casemiro, he formed one of the most balanced, intelligent midfield trios in modern football. Commentators called it a perfect triangle. Coaches described it as a masterclass in control. And fans? Fans simply adored him. There was a playful moment in training one day when Marcelo challenged Luka to juggle with a tennis ball. Luka, without hesitation, juggled it 41 times, smiling the whole time, before passing it back with a flick off his heel. Everyone burst into laughter. "We get it," Marcelo joked. "You were born with a football in your cradle." Behind the charm and laughs, Luka's game continued to evolve. He wasn't just a passer anymore, he was a leader. And soon that leadership would be tested on the grandest stage of all, the World Cup. In 2018, Luka led a Croatian team that few had predicted would make it past the group stage. The squad was solid but lacked the star power of France, Brazil, or Germany. Still, they had something rare: unity, belief, and a captain who led not with shouting but with example. Their journey in Russia was magical. Each game became more intense, more emotional. Croatia went to extra time 3 times in a row, against Denmark, Russia, and England, and won them all. Luka played nearly every minute, often running more than any other player on the pitch. In the semi-final against England, with Croatia trailing 1-0, many believed they were done. But Luka didn't panic. He kept moving, kept creating, and eventually helped turn the tide. Ivan Perisic scored the equalizer, and Mario Mandzukic scored the winner in extra time. Croatia were in their first ever World Cup final. Some say this moment defined Luka. Others say he had already proven himself. But no one doubted anymore. The boy from war-torn Zadar was now the captain of a nation's dreams. The final against France didn't end in victory. Croatia lost 4-2, but their performance won hearts around the world. Luka, despite the loss, was named the tournament's best player, winning the Golden Ball. He walked up to receive the trophy with grace, even as tears welled in his eyes. That image, Luka in his red and white checkered jersey, golden ball in hand, eyes glistening, became iconic. It wasn't just about football. It was about resilience, hope, and the story of someone who never let circumstances define him. When he returned to Madrid after the World Cup, he was greeted with applause at the airport. Fans chanted his name. Teammates hugged him like a hero. For someone so reserved, Luka found himself at the center of the world's attention. And yet, in his first press conference after the World Cup, he didn't talk about personal awards. He talked about how proud he was of his team, his country, and how he hoped his journey would inspire kids who feel small, overlooked, or afraid. "There's always a way," he said, "if you work with love." He wasn't just speaking to Croatia, he was speaking to that little boy in the hotel parking lot, and to every kid just like him. After the emotional whirlwind of the 2018 World Cup, Luka Modrić returned to club football at Real Madrid not just as a celebrated player, but as a symbol. He had become more than a midfielder, he was now a leader with a legacy. Still, with so many accolades behind him, some wondered if his best days were over. But Luka, true to form, had other ideas. At 33, many footballers begin to slow down. But Luka seemed to defy time. His touch remained sharp, his awareness razor-like, and his stamina unmatched. At training, the younger players joked that Luka must be hiding a secret. "What do you eat?" one of them asked. Luka laughed and pointed to his water bottle. "Discipline," he said. The 2018-2019 season was perhaps his most bittersweet. While he won the Ballon d'Or, the first Croatian ever to do so, Real Madrid faced challenges. Cristiano Ronaldo had left for Juventus, the team was in transition, and managerial changes disrupted the rhythm. Still, Luka remained steady. Even in defeat, he played with composure. He ran, passed, tackled, everything with quiet dignity. Winning the Ballon d'Or was a moment of pure poetry. For years, the award had gone to either Messi or Ronaldo. But in 2018, the world paused to recognize the midfielder who did not dazzle with goals but orchestrated beauty in motion. When Luka held the golden trophy, he seemed almost embarrassed. He dedicated the win to all the players who might not score many goals, but who worked just as hard. a nod to the unsung heroes. One reporter asked him, "Did you ever think, growing up in a war zone, that you would be here?" Luka smiled. "Honestly," he said, "I just wanted to play football without fear." There was a charming incident shortly after the award. During a casual meet and greet, a young boy asked Luka to sign his Ballon d'Or replica. Luka signed it, then asked, "Do you play football?" The boy nodded. Luka leaned in and said, "Then this trophy is yours too. It belongs to dreamers." As Real Madrid rebuilt their squad, Luka became the mentor. He guided young players like Federico Valverde, Eduardo Camavinga, and later Jude Bellingham. In team huddles, he was often the calmest voice. Before big matches, he was known to speak just a few words, always soft but powerful. "Trust the ball," he once told a teammate before a Champions League knockout game. "It never lies." Through the seasons, Luka kept adding trophies. More La Liga titles, more Champions League victories. His collection of silverware could fill a room, but he rarely spoke about them. What mattered more were the moments. A perfect assist, a difficult comeback, or even a silent walk through the Bernabeu after a hard loss. Those moments, Luka believed, built character. And then came another challenge: age. As he neared his late 30s, the media began questioning how long he could continue. "Is this Luka's last season?" they asked. But every time he stepped onto the pitch, he silenced the noise. One game in particular, against Paris Saint-Germain, stood out. Luka, then 36, dominated the midfield, even assisting a crucial goal with a dazzling run and pass that would have made a 25-year-old jealous. Some say that match redefined aging in football. Others argue it was simply Luka doing what he had always done, proving people wrong. Off the field, Luka stayed humble. He still visited Zadar, his hometown, and often donated quietly to local schools and hospitals. He avoided the spotlight, preferring quiet dinners with his family to lavish parties. His children, 2 sons and a daughter, became regulars at his matches, wearing Modrić jerseys that always seemed a little too big. One evening, after a big win, Luka was asked if he ever thought of retiring. He looked out at the stadium lights and replied, "Maybe. But not today. Today I still feel like that boy with the ball and no shoes." That image, the barefoot boy on cracked pavement, stayed with him. Even when he played in stadiums filled with 80,000 fans, part of Luka remained in that hotel parking lot, kicking shadows away with each pass. As Croatia prepared for another international tournament, Luka once again answered the call. He wore the captain's armband with pride, never for glory but because he believed in something bigger, the power of unity, of representing a people who had endured and survived. During a training session before the Euros, one of the younger players pulled him aside and asked, "How do you stay so calm even when the pressure is high?" Luka thought for a moment, then said, "Because I've known real fear. And this is just a beautiful game." For a man who had seen war, pressure was a luxury. Even as his playing time became more limited, coaches and fans alike knew that having Luka on the team meant more than goals or stats. It meant heart. It meant leadership. It meant having someone who could slow the game down not just with his footwork, but with his presence. He didn't chase the spotlight, but somehow, it always found him. Whether it was with a no-look pass in the Champions League, a last-minute assist for Croatia, or simply a quiet moment helping a ball boy who had tripped, Luka remained a reminder that greatness isn't always loud. Some players shine like fire, dazzling, intense, and brief. Luka Modrić shone like the moon, steady, graceful, and always there when you need light. The years passed, but Luka Modrić continued to play with the same quiet determination that had carried him from a war-torn childhood to the world's grandest stages. By now, he had become more than just a player for Real Madrid and the Croatian national team. He was a symbol, of resilience, of discipline, and of enduring excellence. As he entered his late 30s, every match felt like a bonus, a small miracle. Fans across Europe began to realize they were watching the final chapters of a rare career. Commentators spoke of him with reverence. Opponents respected him not only for his vision and intelligence but for his sportsmanship. He never needed to raise his voice or his fists to earn admiration. His play was his statement. One spring evening in Madrid, Luka played a full 90 minutes against Barcelona in El Clasico, and dominated. He intercepted, passed, glided, and led his team to a dramatic victory. At 38, he was the oldest player on the field, but somehow also the most active. As he walked off to a standing ovation, he smiled and waved softly. That night, social media lit up with tributes. One post simply read, "We are witnessing the last of the poets." Despite the physical toll of elite football, Luka never seemed to slow down mentally. His awareness on the pitch was unmatched. He could see passes 2 or 3 moves ahead, like a chess grandmaster planning his strategy. Teammates often said Luka could predict where the ball would be even before they did. "It's like he lives 1 second in the future," a coach once joked. Yet off the pitch, Luka remained unchanged. He still preferred quiet moments to fame. He spent evenings with his wife and children, often helping with homework or cooking dinner. His idea of a perfect night? Watching old football matches and sipping tea. When asked about life after football, he smiled. "I think I'll enjoy being boring," he said. At international level, he played one more World Cup with Croatia in 2022. Though the team didn't reach the final this time, they earned a respectable 3rd place. Luka again led with humility and fire. He was awarded Player of the Match in the playoff, not for scoring but for being everywhere at once, guiding every play like the quiet conductor of a complex orchestra. During the post-match interview, when asked if this was his final World Cup, he looked out at the crowd, a sea of red and white checkers waving in pride, and answered, "This shirt is part of my heart. I will keep playing until it tells me to stop." It was classic Luka, honest, heartfelt, and unpretentious. As retirement loomed closer, clubs and fans began preparing their farewells. Real Madrid offered him a coaching role. Croatia offered a ceremonial position with the national team. But Luka hesitated. "I don't want a statue," he said. "I just want to keep giving until I can't." There's a story from one of his final seasons at Madrid. A young academy player was promoted to the first team and looked visibly nervous during his first practice. Luka noticed, walked over, and said quietly, "Don't try to be impressive. Just be you. That's enough." The boy later said it was the moment that changed his career. By now, Luka's legacy had extended far beyond the game. In Croatia, he became a national icon. His name was written in murals, his face printed on stamps, his journey studied in schools. Yet he avoided the pedestal. "I'm just Luka," he would say. The same boy from the parking lot. And that boy, through decades of challenges, never forgot where he came from. In the final match of his professional career, a Champions League quarterfinal in front of a roaring Bernabeu, Luka started, captained the team, and delivered a masterclass. When he was substituted in the final minutes, the entire stadium stood. Thousands clapped. Many cried. His teammates surrounded him. He touched the pitch one last time and whispered, "Thank you." That night, under the stadium lights, he gave one last wave to the fans and walked down the tunnel. Not with drama, not with tears, but with peace. Like someone who had completed a journey they never thought possible. And so, Luka Modrić stepped away from the game the same way he played it. Quietly, gracefully, without demand for attention. For decades, he had danced across fields, stitched passes through impossible gaps, and carried the weight of a nation with steady feet and a humble heart. His story was never about fame or fortune. It was about a boy who refused to give up. A boy who found joy in a tattered football during a time when joy was scarce. A boy who kept believing when the world kept doubting. As he walked into retirement, the world paused. Not in sadness, but in admiration. Luka's legacy would not fade with the final whistle. It would echo, in every child who dreams with bare feet, in every underdog who's told they're too small, too late, or not enough. Luka proved that greatness isn't about shouting the loudest, it's about being heard through your actions. And somewhere in a quiet corner of Zadar, maybe there's a boy juggling a ball in a hotel parking lot, unaware that his story has already begun. Thanks so much and see you.